Okay, now I think it's working. Hello, everyone. I'm Claire Moon, and this is an astrology forecast for the month of November 2025. And I think this thing is working. I was just talking to myself for 5 minutes before I realized that this thing was not on. And by this thing, I mean the whole thing. So, welcome back. If you are joining me again, you know the usual things. There's a chat. If you're new here, there's a chat on the right-hand side of your screen where you can interact with other astrology enjoyers. And also, you can ask me questions. So if I skip over any particular date this month or in the month ahead that you wanted me to cover and I didn't, just let me know in the chat. That's why I like to do these live to give a bit of accessibility for people to be able to ask me questions while I'm here. I also do a once monthly devoted question and answer time, my office hour. That office hour is office hour. It's the second Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And that is specifically all for just whatever astrology questions people have. But today I'm a little, I try to be on top of the chat as much as possible. But yeah, definitely put your questions in there. I think it is working good. Hello, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there. It's good to see you again. Um, I guess a couple little announcements. All the usual things are still happening. I am booking on my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com. I am a full-time astrologer. I do readings with folks, birth chart readings, personal forecasting. So basically what I do today, but tailored to your own birth chart. I'm also working on my research. I have chosen my top 10 favorite examples out of the 50 that I have for my research project, and that is something that I think I can complete in the next 6 months. I feel okay saying that. What else is going on? My practice is going great. Best way to support me, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to keep up with this. Sign up for my newsletter. I have a newsletter below I send out once a month around the sun's ingress into the next sign. And that newsletter, it changes a bit every month. Like this last month, I talked about the comet Lemon and I did more of a visual astronomy focus. Some months I try to keep it really simple so that beginner astrologers can read it. Some months I write something that's a little bit more poetic or advanced, and that's for my more advanced astrology learners or readers. So I try to put in a little something for everyone every few months. I did another rare event that hasn't been happening much lately, but I put a discount code in my last newsletter, which I will also tell everyone here now. It's Libra, LIBRA. You can use the discount code Libra for 25% off any of my services for the next month. So until December 1st, you can use that discount code. Check it out on my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com. And then finally, I am working on doing an AMA. I've wanted to do an ask about me kind of thing for a long time, mostly because I don't take a lot of time to talk about my lore or, more ancillary questions that aren't about astrology proper. I wanted to give a little bit of a channel for that. So, yeah, you can send me a question. I will answer just about anything. And you can do that on the review section of my website. Go to the reviews tab, and then I've got a little box in there where you can send things, comments, feedback, or questions. Okay, I think that's it for announcements. Let me read off my list of dates. I have a bunch of links below, also the dates of interest, which I will read now. So this is a very busy month, which is why I'm not going to get to all of the dates today. A lot of times I kind of give a Virgo treatment for the month and really get into a lot of details. Here I'm going to be skipping over some days. We have November 4th, Mars is entering Sagittarius. On the 5th of November, a Taurus full moon. Approximately around the 6th, we're going to start to see Venus setting in the morning sky, so becoming less and less visible in the morning. On the 6th, also Venus entering Scorpio. On the 7th, Uranus is returning, going backward into Taurus. On the 9th, Mercury stationing retrograde. On the 11th, Jupiter stationing retrograde. On the 12th, approximately, is when both Mercury and Mars are going to disappear in the evening sky or start to disappear in the evening sky. On the 18th, Mercury is returning, going backward into Scorpio. On the 20th, we have a Scorpio new moon. On the 27th, Saturn stations direct. On the 28th, Mercury stations direct. 29th, 28th, 29th. Approximately the 28th, Mercury is also going to start doing their phasis appearing in the morning sky. And then finally, on the 30th of November, Venus is entering into Sagittarius. I will also be listing some of the lunar benefic and malefic enclosures for the month ahead. So anytime I see the moon, that it's nestled between the rays of extreme intense planets versus when the moon is nestled between the rays of more calm, peaceful, stabilizing energies. I like to list those out as kind of rough, more stable days versus spicy days. I get that information to show my sources from Peter's website, Astro-seek.com. So that's linked below. You can go to Astro-seek.com, and that is where I'm getting all of that lunar enclosure information from. It is all there. I don't list all of them. I'm really picking out the ones from this list. I'll show you here. This is the website Astro-seek I was just mentioning. I don't mention all of these enclosures. The really short ones, for instance, I'll skip over. But if there's like a really long one, or with the malefic enclosures, if it's like a trine, I'm not as worried versus if it's by square opposition, I'll definitely name them. So, all to say, that's where I'm getting that information. And it would really help if we got my astrology software going. So, a little reflection before we move forward into the month ahead. I want to do a little bit of reflection, and then we'll get into November. I don't have too many notes, but I have a few. So the comet, actually, I don't really need the wheel to say that, but I will talk about the comet. You can still see it. If you are, at least, I mean, I'm speaking from my point of view in North America. I'm in the United States, in northern United States. I can see currently it's about an hour or two after sunset in the northwest sky with binoculars. You can see a comet. And maybe even without binoculars, if you've got good eyes and you got a really clear sky, really low light pollution, maybe you don't need binoculars. But if you're in a city, so I'm in a city, and there's a couple parks that I can go to that have a little less light pollution. There's not as much stuff occluding on the horizon. So I was out at about 8:20 p.m. It sets around a little after 9. I think it's about 9:15 p.m. Central time, I guess, or yeah, that'd be Central time. I don't know, that would be about 2.5 hours after sunset. So after the sunsets, wait till it gets dark. And we've got about a good hour or two of viewing time before comet sets. But go check it out. It's worth it. It's in the constellation of Boötes right now. So you can look up, there's a lot of apps people have on their phone now to look at the night sky. So find your night sky viewing app of choice. I like Sky Guide. Not a friend of the show. It's just the app that I have on my phone that seems to work very well. Don't forget to do night vision mode. Make it red so that you don't wreck your night vision when you're out there. It does take about 15 minutes for the eyes to adjust to nighttime. So give yourself time out there. But then it is going to be green, and it was kind of pointed downward. Like looks like it was going right into the ground. So check it out. It's a comet. And then if you want to look at the symbolism of that, I actually don't know a ton about comet symbolism, but if you're a Patreon member of Dr. Ali A. Alomi, check out Dr. Alomi's work. He posted something on his Patreon all about the symbolism of the comet lemon. So go check it out. It's very awesome. Great Patreon follow to begin with, regardless of comet stuff. I think that was my my fun visual astronomy thing. I've really gotten away from my roots. I used to talk about visual astronomy a lot more, and that's part of why I try to mention about when planets are setting or rising in the evening or morning sky, because those are visual things you can see and observe, and they do have symbolism. That is important. Okay, and then the only thing I've been noticing, so just looking back a little bit, or kind of, I guess, to right now in the sky. There is has been a Sun Pluto square. I have been noticing this along with, every year we get the sun in Scorpio. This time we've got a lot of Scorpio energy. It feels like a very sticky energy mentally speaking, and I'm only speaking from my own experience and of one, your mileage may vary. But the my mind's ability to let go of stuff, let go of a topic, let go of a thought train, very difficult to put it down lightly. And if I'm going to find a reflection of that, I think the Scorpio square Pluto stuff is a great reflection of stickiness in the mind. That's what I've been noticing lately. The only other things I wanted to reflect on, and this is more of a repeat from last month's forecast, just looking at like the last few days of the month here, because people are going to be very out and about and active. I wanted to just review the Halloween forecast. So, October 31st, we had a Pisces moon. So this is a Friday. So it's a Halloween party night on a weekend. So people are probably going to be out. Um, Protect yourself, definitely. I'm going to get to that in a few minutes as to why we need to protect ourselves in more ways than one. But hydrate, take breaks. There's some confusion around with Rahu, also with Neptune, Saturn and Neptune. Perfect for Halloween costumes. Excellent. I think about both Saturn and Neptune as they can be about deception. They can be about camouflage, costumes, telling lies, basically. And Halloween is a time where we consent to intentionally lying about our appearance by wearing costumes. So I think some of this energy is just really, it's fine. It's not a threat. It's not a problem. But also, other side of this coin, watch your drinks. That's a very good thing to do all the time. We don't need astrology for that to be good advice. But this is especially an evening where I want people to watch their beverages. Just keep your head on a swivel, Don't go anywhere alone that you wouldn't want to be alone, and strengthen in numbers. And protect yourself also health-wise. We have some activity, Mercury and Mars coming into the first decan of Sagittarius. And this first decan of Sagittarius is sometimes known for, and I get this from Austin Coppock, he talks about this being a place of things spreading very quickly. In the best ways, sometimes we have quickly spreading enthusiasm, excitement, things going viral. But also, this is where we were having some activity, you know, when certain plagues began. There were some lunations around this part of the sky, around the first part of Sagittarius. And that is where I also think about a quickly spreading kind of infection or something. So, being we've got some not super straightforward looking energy coming into that part of the sky right after Halloween, let's protect ourselves on Halloween weekend the best that we can and just be aware of that, not forget that because we're having a good time. And then the overall, though, it looks fun. We've got this mutual reception of Jupiter and the moon. And of course, that helps to mitigate, smooth out, stabilize a lot of challenges that could be going on. It's not the worst sky, but there's a couple little things to note. But otherwise, I mean, having a Pisces moon, that's usually fun it's good for having a fun time, having whimsy, enjoying delights. And then the next day, we have more of it's kind of the same vibe, all the same notes from the night before. But depending on what your time zone is, it actually worked out pretty well that by the time the moon gets to Saturn and this is more on November 1st, the evening of November 1st on Saturday night into the wee hours of Sunday, it's kind of like things start to slow down. The moon meets Saturn around 1 or 2 a.m. Central Time. So that would be like 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern Time. This is way after the night's done. I mean, granted, I feel like the Europeans can party harder. Maybe they'll still be partying in the wee hours, the wee hours of the morning, the next day. All to say, if you tap out of the evening at midnight Central Time, you're probably fine. I think things are going to slow down at about 1 or 2 Central Time. And if you yourself are starting to feel tired, are kind of feeling over it and done, or are just wanting maybe a more quiet, subdued, chill evening on Saturday night versus Friday night, that's another possibility. So Saturn just being a bit more of a chill vibe than, say a fire sign without Saturn or something. So more to do with comforts, enjoying, good food, good visual, artistic kind of stuff, good conversation. That seems like a good vibe for late Saturday into Sunday. So that's my Halloween report. I just wanted to repeat. Um, Everyone's kind of on dating notice for the romantic report. Everyone's on dating notice the first week of September. Uh, and why am I saying that? Because we've also got, and this is heating up around Halloween. It doesn't perfect until after Halloween, first week of November, but a Venus Pluto square is also heating up. There's just a few really unstable things in the sky. And so if you meet someone really cool at the Halloween party that you've never met before, that it's fine, but take it slow. Give like few weeks to kind of figure out, vet, make sure that they are who they say they are, that kind of stuff. I'm always a little skeptical when Pluto is involved with Venus, when people are dating, especially new people, because Pluto can be shenanigans, for lack of better words. Uh, yeah, intensity can be fun, but it doesn't mean it's meaningful. That's what I say about Pluto. Sometimes intensity is meaningful. Sometimes intensity is just intense. Okay. The other thing I wanted to review, and this is something that we're coming into at the end of October into November, and this is where we're entering into a kind of caution with words territory. Pretty much all of November. I mean, even starting now, we're already in the Mercury pre-retrograde shadow time. And sorry, like this forecast today, I am purely in threat detection mode today. I found like one, I found like one happy thing. Um, Sorry. I feel like, yeah, I like to be very empowering and, all that. I do. And I try to be, and I try to find mitigations. But part of the deal here is just finding the slippery spots on the road, any cautions or hazards on the road that we need to steer around, if at all possible. So, just so everyone knows, if you're like, man, why is Claire such a bummer today? It's because there's a lot of hazards on the road this month. There's a few that I want us to see, and this is one of them. So Mercury and Mars are going to oppose Uranus, and when Mercury is opposing Uranus, then our planet of communication, exchanges, information gets interrupted. So communication, information interrupted, disrupted. We could also get unexpected information, unexpected data, unexpected conversations, anything to do with Uranus bringing some unexpected element into the realm of communication, ideas, thoughts. And then we have also Mars going through the same influence. So now our planet of actions influenced by interruption. So interruption with actions, interruption with motivation, interruption with decisions, if you're trying to decide something. So this is getting like some last piece of information that maybe changes your decision. Something unexpectedly, leading to a separation. So, words, Mars, when they're together, when Mars and Mercury are together. And so if you have this in your birth chart, you've had your whole life to deal with this and work with this and find the best ways to deal with it. But people like me don't have it in our birth chart. And so when it comes in the sky, it's like, whoa, hot potato. But this is what I call it, the lawyer, scientist, smarty pants configuration, Mercury Mars conjunction. It's the mind and then Mars's ability to do action and effort. So it's a very strong mind, potent mind, all of that mixing with the volatile, chaotic energy of Uranus. It can be very, breakthroughs, sudden insights, cool. Just be careful with your words out there. So this is a big part of why I'm giving that caution this month. It's not only the Mercury retrograde, it's not only Mercury in Sagittarius. It is also this influence of Uranus and Mars and Mercury all together. It's not just about Mercury. And Mercury is so visible the first part of November. So, like until November 12th or so, what the words are, it's very much more possible that they're going to be seen, heard, gotten to by someone. So, like Mercury being visible, Mars being visible, that means what is said or done or decided is out in the open. Like we'll be able to see it for better or for worse. So that's how we're entering into October. We can see, oh, not by the hour, let's go by the day. Can see Mercury is going to enter into Sagittarius in a couple days. Here I'm broadcasting on the 27th. Mercury is moving into Sagittarius on the 29th. And that's when that Mercury-Uranus opposition is perfecting. So, the party starts before November. But the Mars-Uranus, that doesn't perfect until around, what was it? The 6th, right? Nope, the 4th. So yeah, especially this first week in November, uh, take care of yourselves extra, take care of each other extra. Be careful with words, ideas, beware of philosophical battles. Choose your battles wisely over the next week into November. Now, a couple caveats. So, just considering this whole month of November, if you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, that means that that's less threat for you. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, when Mercury is retrograde in the sky, y'all are doing a lot better than the rest of us who don't have it in our birth chart. So you can dial down the threat assessment today with the Mercury retrograde stuff. Also, and this is a bit more of an advanced thing, but annual profections are very important when we start looking at transits. There's so many planets. There's a bunch of visible planets, invisible ones, asteroids, and it is a lot of information. And how do we prioritize that? And the answer is with annual profections and identifying the time lords for the year. So this is why getting not to make a thing that pushes people to buy my services. I like to be ethical with my sales. However, something I'm noticing is that with so much astrology online, like what I'm doing, like everyone who's doing this, whether you're doing it by rising sign, whether you're just doing a whole month thing, this is really vague information that is a lot of it's not applicable to a lot of people because not every planet is awake every year of your life. So some years Mercury is asleep, essentially, and not doing stuff. If I'm using Hellenistic astrology, if I'm using some other type of astrology, maybe this isn't the case, but if you're using Western astrology that comes from Southwest Asia, Northern Africa, this is this comes from that. So, Hellenistic astrology, not all planets are active all the time. For each year of our lives, there's anywhere from 1 to 3-ish planets that are going to be more loud, more vivid, doing things and worth your attention. So, for instance, if your time lords this year are Mercury and Mars, you would want to pay attention to a lot of what I'm going to say today. If Mercury and Mars are not your time lords, or if Sagittarius is not a profected place for you, maybe Sagittarius isn't activated, Mercury and Mars, Jupiter are not activated for you, then you can go get a snack. Honestly, you don't have to listen to anything I say today. Pretty much. You can, yeah, it's not, you can deprioritize it and not worry about it as much. So they, or whatever does happen, shouldn't be the headline. It shouldn't, like if there's a Mercury retrograde snafu and Mercury is not your time lord, then I don't expect it to be a headline for you. So that's how I prioritize. And I'm going to start going on some, speaking of philosophical battles that I should choose wisely. I've been wanting to go on some like proselytization campaign about just getting every, because we all got on board with the Mercury retrogrades. We all got on board with the Saturn returns. People know about that. People know like their big three. People know about Cazimis now. People know about so much. I think the next thing we need to like integrate is the Time Lords, because there's way too much information out here and it's really helpful to be able to prioritize. So if none of that made sense, don't worry about it. But also, this is a good reason to get at least like an annual reading or a reading like every 2 years or so, so that the astrologer, the Hellenistic astrologer, can give you your Time Lords for the year. Also, if you know any kind of traditional astrology, medieval, Islamic, Persian astrology, they're also finding Time Lords. Vedic astrology also assume that they have Time Lords because there was crossover. So yeah, it's not uncommon, but it is a little advanced, but it's so helpful. So yeah, anyway, that's my rant. Let's get back to it. I think those are all my big general caveat things. Just that, okay, we're going to be careful with our words. We enter the month of November with a bit of instability. And yeah, uh, it's several pieces of testimony that are making Mercury having a difficult time and they're visible. So it's not like this stuff is happening under the radar. I think those were my main points, my general points about Mercury in the month ahead. And then after the 12th of November, Mercury goes under the beams or they start to disappear in the sky. And so then there is more stuff where shenanigans, difficulties, complexities become quieter or they're happening, but they're not as visible, apparent, obvious. Uh, and then the post retrograde shadow for Mercury is done on December 16th. So know that what, I mean, we already entered into the pre-retrograde shadow. That happened. Oh, when did that happen? On the 20th of October, so a week ago. We entered the Mercury retrograde pre-shadow time. And so whatever is begun now or whatever does happen with Mercury retrograde for people, it's probably not going to wrap up till mid-December. For a lot of people, this could just be a lot to do with the holidays. I know sometimes retrogrades are about some kind of diversion or doing things differently temporarily. And sometimes that is literally just people taking off of work for once, going on a vacation, seeing family members that they don't usually see. So in some more neutral ways, I do think it's just going to be kind of the hullabaloo and the busyness around the November, December holiday season. And yeah, we've had, this is not the first one, like the last several holiday seasons, there's like usually a Mercury retrograde. So this isn't new, but what is new is Uranus being opposite all of it. So it adds a bit. And then one mitigation that's worth noting, it's a minor mitigation, but a lot of the challenges that will be happening in the Sagittarius parts of our chart this month in November are going to be mitigated potentially by Jupiter, the Lord of that stuff, being in good shape, being able to reconcile, find a solution, some kind of remedy for whatever does, if anything does go awry in November. So that's nice. It might start off difficult, but then Jupiter in good shape shows more of a potential for some kind of resolution. So, general Mercury thoughts for the month concluded. I think that's all I had there. Uh, yeah. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat before I get into the list of stuff. And I'm getting a question about what degree is the Taurus full moon at? It's in the middle of Taurus. I think it's at 15. Let me double check here. What? 13. It's at 13 degrees, 22 arc minutes of Taurus in that second decan. So we're going to go all over that Taurus moon in just a minute. I'm definitely going to talk about that today, as well as the Scorpio New Moon. We'll be talking about those two lunations today. All right. And then what is a Time Lord? Yeah, yeah. What is a Time Lord? A Time Lord is a planet that rules over a certain period of time. So the life can be divided up into all kinds of periods based on transits, but also other timing techniques. So annual profections, zodiacal releasing, decennials, all of these techniques, you can end up finding a period of time and you can assign one planet that's in charge of that period of time. And then that planet becomes alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic during that time and essentially does what it's promised to do from your natal chart. And during other periods of time, when that planet isn't a Time Lord, they're not doing as much and we don't have to pay attention to them as much. So, and this stuff comes from Dorotheus and Valens. That's who was saying to do it this way. Yep. And Astrology by Aaron is bringing up a really good point. It's normally birthday to birthday. So it's funny because when we start learning astrology, we start with sun sign astrology. We really pay attention to the birthday, what month were you born in? And then you learn a little bit deeper and you start to reject sun sign astrology. And then you come full circle to realize in the most complex ways, yeah, the birthday is actually extremely important no matter what. So yes, birthday to birthday. And on your birthday, there is a vibe shift or near it, depending on which technique you use. So this is, I think, at least hopefully showing people. I like to think of it as like, okay, if I don't know a thing, but I know it exists, that's like a green flag. I stick a green flag in it and I'm like, okay, that concept exists and I'll learn more about that later. But just knowing that it exists is so helpful. Okay. And also, it helps to give a grain of salt insofar as why, like, let's say I'm talking about a transit today and it's really worrisome. And you're like, crap, Claire, why are you doom scrolling? You can remind yourself that, hey, well, there's a bunch of other factors here that need to be considered based on your personal birth chart. So we can worry a little bit, but don't worry too much. Why I like to look forward in the first place, like why we're doing this, is to plan, strategize, prepare for the future, and to know when we need to exercise a little bit more care and mindfulness in our day. Some days we have a little bit, they are more forgiving. Some astrological weather is more forgiving. Our mistakes don't have as big of consequences. And other days, our mistakes are going to have bigger consequences and it's not as forgiving. So I like to find both. But if I am trying to get this done in not 4 hours, unfortunately today I am just going to look for the threats. Uh, but yeah, take it with a grain of salt because all of our personal birth charts are so different. Your mileage may vary very much. But such a good discussion to have. And I usually like to have it before most of my forecasts. Okay, let's see. The first part of the month, we already talked about it. So November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, pretty much the whole first week. Careful with your words, careful with your ideas. If there's a lot of irritation or any aversive feelings, like irritation is the smallest one. It can go all the way to anger. Just know that that could be a temporary thing. Give yourself time, and you might feel different when the moon is in a different sign a few days later. But yeah, this first week, choose your battles. On the 3rd of November, we've got Mars in the last degree of Scorpio, queuing up to oppose Uranus exactly by degree. So even on the 3rd, you're going to be careful, take extra good care of yourself and other people. And then on the 4th, we get Mars entering into Sagittarius, doing that opposition exactly before continuing to move on. And I like to even give like 3 more degrees on the other side. Like I want that planet 3 degrees separating from its last influence before I say, okay, this vibe is chilled off and gone away. So that's going to be more like this Mars Uranus opposition cooling off more November 8th and beyond. But Mars Uranus opposition, again, it's this energy of interruptions to your actions, interruptions to making decisions. If you're trying to do somewhere, trying to get from point A to point B, something unexpected could come up. It could be that you're forced to pivot, to take a different path, route, approach. So, especially this first week in November, if you're coming up on some kind of resistance that's kind of prodding you to do a change or do it differently, it is, I think, better to lean into doing it differently instead of getting really stubborn about it. Okay. So that's a big influence. And then that Mars opposite Uranus, that perfects on the 4th at about 11:30 a.m. Central Time. And then we get the Taurus full moon. That's happening right after Mars and Mercury and all that. They're all nestled into Sagittarius. Then we're going to get our Taurus full moon. So that is the morning of November 5th, later in the day, the further east in global time zones you go. The middle decan of Taurus, the 6 of Pentacles, if you do the astrology tarot correspondence. So the sun is in the 6 of Cups over here. So we've got now, this could be a culmination, a fruiting, a peaking of something that you've been up to for about 2 weeks, bringing that to its completion before you share it or take it to its next iteration. The full moon can also be a time of realizations, understanding. It can also be a time of simply busyness, just a very busy few days. When the moon has a lot of brightness in it, then that can reflect a lot of busyness or activity down here. And so this is my my personal explanation for why emergency rooms, emergency departments get more full or more busy during full moons, the full moon thing. And it's less about that like full moons are malefic or that people get injured during them or people act absurd during full moons or something. I think it's more just like if there's a lot more people out and doing more things, your statistical probability for stuff happening that's unfortunate also increases. So anyway, that's what's going on. That leads us into that first week, leads us into this full moon. And then what's interesting, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about it, but before I do, the day after, the moon re-triggers this Mars-Uranus opposition. So I know that, Mars-Uranus opposition happens more on the 4th. The full moon is on the 5th, but then on the 6th, the moon re-triggers that Mars-Uranus opposition. So this continues to be kind of a volatile feeling week where we may have to be really flexible, pivot, change, or adjust, which is gonna, I know we have a few planets that are really good at doing that, really good at changing, pivoting, adjusting in those more flexible, mutable signs like Sagittarius and Pisces, but the luminaries are going to be in fixed signs. So I don't think we're going to want to change course. I think we're gonna really wish that these interruptions or whatever new information coming in was not. I have a feeling that, we might want to dig our heels in, as Scorpio and Taurus both often like to do. But again, I don't know if we'll have that luxury. So that was interesting. Now going back to this full moon, a little bit more detail. The Six of Pentacles. I like to think of that, this middle decan of Taurus, as the kind of the epitome of material world stability. It's everything that you worked for, worried about in that first 10 degrees of Taurus that you've put together and made it through so that you have some kind of material success or stability on the other side. And then that last part of Taurus being the Seven of Pentacles, where we try to maintain, upkeep what we have created or cultivated. Or we may have failure and might not be able to hold on to that. Or it's the natural progression of abundance through to loss and then growth and loss and growth and loss in that 5, 6, 7 of Pentacles journey. But this full moon really activates, highlights the middle part of that material journey where we have worked towards something, we've achieved something in the material plane. Interestingly, if you listen to Fortune's Wheelhouse, which is a podcast by T. Susan Chang and Mel Meline, they're both tarot folks. They talk about how there was a bit of a mistranslation for the Six of Pentacles. I think a lot of the art has been centered around, a lot of the symbolism has been centered around gift giving and this sharing and reciprocity materially. Yeah, so many decks. I really can't think of really any tarot decks that don't have some art for the Six of Pentacles that relates to some giving and receiving. But and there was, according to T. Susan Chang and Mel Meline, there was a transcription error or a translation error that it was the word presence, not the gift, not present like a gift, but like presence, like being present in the moment, like being with the material moment. So I was like, oh, that's entirely different. But the longer I thought about it too, I'm like, well, I mean, material abundance, material stability, uh, is so interwoven with our ability to be present. I think it's easier to be present if you don't have to worry about your bills. It's easier to be here now if you aren't haunted by the past or the future. It's just easier to enjoy the present moment if there is physical abundance here. So I don't know. I'm not saying they're totally unrelated, but I wonder too then, not just about material world success and abundance, but if you do have any kind of stability to speak of, how are we being present with it? Are we being with what we're tasting, smelling, touching, hearing, appreciating that, enjoying it, being with what is? Or if it's something unenjoyable, how are we also being with that? And that is another being present thing that exists. So I thought that was some interesting takes on this moon, some culmination, fruiting, peaking related to some material world effort, material world achievement. When I say material world, I just mean the kind of what now the new age people call like 3D or Earth school or whatever. It's like, nah, it's just your life. You have to pay bills and feed yourself and stuff. We live in a capitalistic hellscape. So, what have we achieved? And how are we sharing it? I think we can talk about that. Let's talk about the giving gifts and presents and receiving. It's in there for some reason. Let's just say it's magical and it's supposed to be there. Then, if you have abundance, are you able to share it? And in that 2 weeks after, how are you able to share that? So, overall, looking at the condition of this lunation beyond the symbolism, the ruler of the moon is in good shape but can't see. The moon is exalted in this place. So overall, like it feels like there's some support for what is peaking, or there has been some support for what is culminating, peaking, fruiting. It's not really bothered by intense or difficult energies. Uh, Jupiter can see. So, as far as full moons go, I don't I don't mind it. I think it's fine. I think it's fine to make your moon water on this one. I think it's looks stable enough. Let me see if I had any difficult things about it. Oh, I did. I did. I knew there was something. Um, so the aspect after the moon leaves the bonds of the sun, so after the moon gets 15 degrees away from the sun, it has a conjunction and some interaction with the outer planets, and will also oppose Mars and Mercury. That's what the moon is going into. So those are some kind of intense transformative energies. It doesn't look like a peaceful aftertaste on this one. So very busy, energetic week, this first week of November. Squared by Pluto, by sign, not by degree. Yeah. Yeah. Not like the most peaceful kind of lunation or sky. Safe enough to make your moon water. Not the most easeful aftertaste afterwards. Final answer. Venus and Pluto are also pretty square at this time and in an engagement within 3 degrees. So November 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th-ish. That Venus Pluto square will be right on. So if there's any, I noticed this one a lot. I've given examples before whenever I've met new important people in my life, or when I say, got dinner with my boyfriend's parents for the first time, second time, and you're nervous and you want to make a good impression. I think sometimes that can be Venus square Pluto. It's that tension relationally. But sometimes that can be really constructive or natural. It can be a job interview. It can be doing a presentation at work that you really want to go well. Anytime you're kind of socially trying to put your best foot forward and it's a little tense. I think that can be what this Venus Pluto square is about in more of the tame version. It can also be intense art or really powerful, profound artistic experience, challenging artistic experience, profound relationship experiences, big conversations, important conversations with people around the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th of November. Um, Venus is so powerful. I mean, one of the worst things with a powerful Venus is that there's this desire, it's so strong, and there's such this clarity and awareness about what is fair and reciprocitous and ethical. And that is not comfortable, you know. Seeing something that is disturbing clearly. It's good to be clear, like that's a good thing, but it's not comfortable. Also, so like these challenges to the values, challenges to the ethics, any ethical dilemmas. Ugh, that could be what's around here. Um, Sometimes necessary but not comfortable. I think that yeah, that's one of the difficult things. Also, self-censorship. Again, sometimes it makes sense. You're meeting your new family member, you're meeting a new friend, you are at a job interview. Yeah, you're probably not going to just say whatever comes to mind. So, at best, Venus in Libra is so diplomatic, so able to navigate this Pluto square very skillfully with grace and equanimity. And on the other hand, Venus, a really strong Venus in Libra, can be censorship. It can be trying to censor the self, trying to censor others. So, we've got this very Sagittarius, fiery, expressive, especially verbally expressive thing going on. Very philosophy, kind of warriors over here in Sag. And that might be kind of tense having that in the same sky as the diplomat who might even censor, trying in order to try to keep some kind of perceived balance. So that's a vibe. This is just another thing kind of saying, yeah, be careful with your words, be careful with what you're sharing online the first week of the month. And again, I don't mean that to like encourage silence or complacency or giving in to fear and not saying stuff. I'm saying pick your battles wisely, be strategic. Maybe don't do it when Mars is on the descendant. If you're going to do it in the first week of November, don't do it when Mars is on the descendant. Don't do it when Mars is configured to an angle. Like that's what I want people to take away. It's I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but yeah, this is a very tense social, potentially tense social vibe. So read the room, take care of yourselves. You know what I usually say. And then, is there anything else with this full moon? I, yeah, no, I don't think I need to say anything else about that. Oh, just the only other thing too. Okay, so the first week in November, with what is culminating, fruiting, peaking, you might have been working on something for 2 weeks. You might have also been working on something since April of 2025. So sometimes these full moon moments are a culmination since the 6 months before when we had like a Scorpio new moon or Taurus new moon. I can't remember which one, but in that longer 6 month cycle that lunations go through of having a new and a full moon in the same sign, that is, or the same axes, that this could be another plot point, say in the topics having to do with your Scorpio and Taurus areas. Maybe this full moon on November 5th speaks to something that began 6 months ago. So that would take a little bit of digging or homework, perhaps, to look at April of 2025, to look at the life topics that Scorpio and Taurus are associated with for you, to figure out, if there's a pattern there for you. Venus square Pluto, yep. Venus very powerful. That can be helpful. That can also be complicated. And then, as I had mentioned, the moon is going to re-trigger on the 6th, this Mercury-Mars stuff. So just because we're done with that opposition of Mars-Uranus, just because we're over the full moon, yeah, continue to be careful on the 6th, on Thursday, with ideas, words, travel, speech, relational stuff. At this point, too, Venus is getting within 15 degrees of these suns. So Venus is getting to the end of Libra, entering into Scorpio, and now they're going to get close enough to the sun in the morning where they're going to start to disappear. So it depends on your location, atmosphere, a bunch of other conditions, but the convention of 15 degrees away, that's when a planet is either going to appear or disappear. And so Venus is going through a huge change at the end of the first week of November. When they move into Scorpio, they are going to not be as supported to relate, to have fun, to easily find pleasure. Venus is going to have to work harder, be more creative, more adaptable with how they do pleasure, how they do fun, how they relate. They might not have their usual tools, skills, abilities for relating, for creativity, for art, beauty, but they might get some different tools and be able to make something cool. So they are losing dignity, and that does make Venus stuff harder. Also, being under the beams like this, that makes things harder for Venus. So if you know what your rising sign is, and you can clock what house topics Venus rules. So for this theoretical Scorpio rising, Venus rules the 12th house of, say, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. the seventh house of partnerships, those topics are going to go better for you before November 7th versus after. So if you need to also like gift giving, like if you got shopping to do, it is last call for everyone to get all their shopping done real soon, if at all possible. Shopping weather is not getting any better as November starts and continues. So yeah, this Venus entering into Scorpio is a bit of a change in the environment. And that happens on November 6th at 4:39 p.m. Central Time. That's exactly when Venus goes into Scorpio. So that's our deadline for beauty, love, romance, gift giving, ethics, diplomatic, political discussions. For those to go a little better, it's going to be before the 6th. It starts to get harder and harder and harder after the 6th. Um, Venus and Scorpio has their plus side. They have their advantages, but I am really just strictly going on the Hellenistic dignity and under the beams kind of talk right now. Makes it difficult. And they're under the beams now. So the rest of November, actually pretty good for secret, covert, gift-giving operations. Um, but it also means relational stuff, relationship things, being quieter or being kind of swept under the rug, not being as apparent, open, matters of beauty, love, sex, romance, ethics, all of those topics of Venus not being as loud or apparent for the rest of November. Might still be going on, but just not in the on the main timeline in front of our eyes. And Venus in Scorpio also means that they're doing their exact square with Pluto. So I had mentioned that first week in November, anyone cool you met at the party on Halloween, everyone's still on notice. Continue to take care of yourself, continue to, if you, especially if like you're immunocompromised or something, this whole first week of November, just take good care of yourself. And then that Venus Pluto, that passes. I want to see the exact time, although I'm going to put some days in front of it. Um, well, November 7th at 9:43 p.m. is when the Venus Pluto square is perfected. That'll be the most intense part of it. But even a few days after, let's wait for Venus to get a few degrees away. So yeah, like November 9th, then my dating warning goes away. The dating notice is over. It's still not super easy for Venus in Scorpio under the beams, but we're no longer dealing with Pluto, and that was one of my bigger concerns. So, yeah, dating notice lifts around November 8th, 9th. And I think one last thing about Venus in Scorpio. So let's talk about a nice thing about Venus in Scorpio, or just Scorpio in general. But, you know, Venus is on point here in terms of deeply enjoying stuff, deeply enjoying, deeply appreciating, deep pleasure. I know we usually think of the deep feelingness of Scorpio and we think immediately of, I shouldn't say we, I immediately, and I think I do speak for a lot of people. We go to the worst thing. Deep pain, deep betrayal, deep suffering, deep separation. And like, yes, this is a Mars ruled place. However, especially when Venus is in there, can we also experience deep gratitude or joy or connection, deep, like intimate connection with people, um, deeply appreciating art, being touched by art or music. It is listening to the same song 25 times in a row. You know, that thing, that's the Venus and Scorpio behavior, is being on the same thing you love and like you love it until you die. So intense love, all of that is possible with Venus and Scorpio. So there are some good things. I hope we enjoy those as well. But yeah, I gotta give the warnings. And I think that's all I have to say about that. So then the next thing on the map is a lunar malefic enclosure. That that's actually also on the 6th. So again, just yet another thing. Really beating a dead horse here. There's several things about the first week in November that I don't like. And one of them is a lunar malefic enclosure, and that is in the central time zone, November 6th from 2:24 a.m. to 11:48 a.m. So then universal time, the difficult patch of weather here that I'm going to advise caution in general. This is not when I would make requests. This is not when I would have your meeting at work. This is not when I would have that sensitive conversation. 8:24 a.m. Universal Time to 5:48 p.m. Universal Time. Unless, of course, you don't care about the outcome, then go ahead. Granted, sometimes lunar malefic enclosures can be doing the hard thing. I know sometimes it's hard to know when to lean into the hard thing versus avoid it because the weather sucks. It depends on, it's always a case by case basis. But sometimes the lunar malefic enclosure, sometimes I take it as this is not a time to do things when you want to succeed or for it to feel good. But other times, lunar malefic enclosure is going to the gym, doing the uncomfortable thing, having the uncomfortable conversation, because it's that configuration is literally reflecting some kind of discomfort. So in my electional astrology brain that's trying to find the best dates to do stuff is going to avoid times like this, but my kind of lived experience of astrology self, my kind of own personal experience is that a lot of times when there's a lunar malefic enclosure happening, I'm just doing some chore that I don't want to do. So that's on the 6th of November. Cool. Let's talk about, and I'm going to check the chat, but then we're going to talk about Uranus changing signs and going into Taurus for the last time, at least for another 84 years. What's going on in this chat? Hello. Is there anything to be said for the fact that the full moon is more or less unaspected? Yeah, I mean, I think that just adds a lot less influence. So there's not as many spices in the pot. So looking back at that lunation on the 5th of November, yeah, we've got largely unaspected sun and moon here. Venus can't see, Mercury and Mars can't see, Chiron, Uranus can't see. By sign, though, well, and kind of by degree. I mean, Jupiter can see, Saturn can see by a sextile. So when there are less influences, then we're getting more pure Taurus, Scorpio themes, Taurus, Scorpio, yeah, archetypes coming up and not being as affected or more complexified by other factors. Um, then I also think it's going to be much more just about these Taurus, Scorpio parts of your life because there's say, Mercury can't see this lunation, so it's not going to be bringing in like Gemini or Virgo topics. It's not going to be bringing in Mercury topics. Same thing with Mars. So there's just less life topics involved, fewer life topics, fewer archetypes involved when you're getting a configuration that's pretty much in isolation. But again, even this one, it's not really like there's three other, well, if you count the ones, if you count the invisible planets, we've got four planets that can see this lunation. So, I mean, there's some influences coming in, but hopefully that answers that. Good question. Um, Asim is mentioning, and I'm not sure now, I've lost where this was regarding, but um, maybe when I was talking about that first decan of Sagittarius and having to do with things that go viral or uh, some quickly spreading thing. They had mentioned change in temperature, water-related diseases, tsunami. Yeah, I'm not a powerful enough wizard to predict weather stuff. Um, or like I know you can start to get into, especially if there's a lot of like water sign activity involved, the place that you'll find certain things, like certain diseases, is an airborne disease, a waterborne disease. I do think astrology can speak to that. So yeah, that water trine, um, with part of it ruling over Sagittarius. Yeah, none of it looks, well, it looks kind of messy potentially. Hello, woke ones. Welcome. Thanks everyone for being here and for your lovely questions and comments. I appreciate it. Makes it more fun. Um, I think we are coming into Mercury retrograde discussion. Oh no, we're going to talk about Uranus first, and then we'll talk about the retrograde. Keep it moving. All right. Now, we have had since July, we had our preview of Uranus in Gemini. We've had a few months now to try to see what change is coming into the Gemini part of our life. So now, as of November 7th, Uranus is going to go back into Taurus. And when they get into Taurus, they're going to go eventually, they're going to retrograde back to 27 degrees, 27 arc minutes of Taurus. So we can see that here. And that's on February 3rd of 2026. This is as far back as Uranus is going to get in Taurus. So that means if you have any personal planets in your birth chart that are at the last 3 degrees of any fixed sign. So if you have any planets, your midheaven, any of your angles in the last 3 degrees of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, this Uranus transit is going to affect you. And you'll be feeling really your last barbecue, your last rodeo of Uranus and Taurus. This is something that's been going on for several years. Uranus has been hanging out at the end of Taurus. So if we look like years wise, a year ago, or this last February, Uranus was at 23 degrees of Taurus. The year before that, in 2024, they were around 19, 20s, in the 20s of Taurus. So it's a 7 year long transit. It takes Uranus 7 years to make it through a sign. They've been in there since 2018, 2017, 2018, and they'll be done 2025, 2026. So that's going on. And so Taurus bringing their energy of change, doing things differently, insight, breakthrough, sudden insight, breakthroughs, ingenuity, but also disruptions, interruptions, and change. And this has been in Gemini right over my IC and in my fourth. And I had my parents visit me for the first time. Both of my parents have not been in this state. I have not let them come visit me since 2013. It was my graduation. It's when I graduated with my doctorate. That was the last time both of my parents were here at the same time to see me. For so many reasons that I'm not going to get into. It was just always more convenient for me to drive to Minnesota, where I'm from originally. And Uranus going over my IC spoke to some major changes, which is them being able to come visit me now. So that was interesting. I didn't want to do it. I'm I'm nervous. I'm not a hostess. I'm not a natural hostess. I freak out over everything, of course. I think I need to make five, like, four-course dinners for everything. Like, I go into like 1950s housewife mode. It's very stressful. So I didn't want them to come. But I saw this. I saw Uranus and it was on my IC. The IC has to do with parents, home, family. I was like, okay, let's just lean into change. Let's lean into this. Let's do something differently with my parents, have the requirement fulfilled, as T. Susan Chang says. So, it was great. It went great. It was fun. I even had fun. It was fine. So it doesn't have to be bad. Sometimes the disruptions or the doing things differently can be good. Um, it really depends, but that's gonna again be going back into Taurus on the 7th, and that'll be there till February. Um, Changing whatever it's around. And Mercury is really slowing down. So Mercury stations on the 9th of November, but even by like the 6th, they're just so slow. They're at their station degree, and Mercury is starting to double back on Mars. So, yep, we're being careful with our words. We're saying things hopefully slowly and carefully. In Sagittarius, we can go too fast. And sometimes the challenge comes or the issues come from just going too fast and forgetting some things. So on the 9th, we get Mercury stationing retrograde. They will be retrograde until the 29th at 11:30-ish a.m. Central Time. So the 9th to the 29th. And again, their post retrograde shadow is going to be complete on December 16th. So even usually, and this is something I hear Chris Brennan say a lot, that like the second half of the retrograde, even if you can just get halfway through the retrograde, the second half, you'll start to slowly see the resolution of any challenges that arose during the retrograde. And then even furthermore, after Mercury stations direct, continued resolution until December 16th. We get through Mercury retracing all their steps. That'll be again about a month and a half from now. So Mercury is going to begin the story on the 9th. And yeah, slowing down is a great antidote. Now, again, if you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, don't worry about my ominous tone. My Mercury retrograde protocols usually include underscheduling yourself, not scheduling yourself back to back, giving yourself more time for commute, more time to fix things, more time for whatever. Under promising, over performing, under promise. If you think it'll be done in 3 days, maybe it'll be eight. Mercury or any retrograde often brings things back from the past. Sometimes that's because it needs review and it needs to be redone. Sometimes it's because you found an old thing in your closet and now you have it again. So it can be sometimes those things from the past are neutral, sometimes they're fun and cool and exciting, and other times it's they're coming back because there's a problem. So that's a Mercury retrograde experience. So I'm not going to come down and say it's all bad or it's not a problem at all. And, how dare I doomsay a Mercury retrograde? But yeah, it depends on the chart. And if you got it in your birth chart, you don't have to worry as much. And it might actually be a fine time for you. But Mars is still here and Uranus is still here. So be careful. Um, for clues on what that Mercury retrograde would be about, I do want us to look at both Scorpio and Sagittarius because Mercury does go from one sign to the other, and it might be involving both the house topics of Scorpio and Sag. So for this theoretical Taurus rising, let's say Mercury is a time lord, they're important this year. Maybe this is a transit that matters for them. Then it may have to do with partners and shared resources. That could be more what it has to do, or what this retrograde would be about for a Taurus rising. So you can check that out if you know your rising sign, see what house topics or it might be involved. And the next item on the list is Jupiter stationing retrograde, and that's on the 11th. So the slower superior planets like Jupiter and Saturn, they station retrograde, uh, and they stay retrograde for like 4 months. So that whole retrograde period, I'm not really paying as much attention to it as I might like a shorter Mercury retrograde period, but I am very interested in when Jupiter is stationing. So November 11th, I expect Jupiter topics to be very apparent, loud, important, even leading up to November 11th, the first week in November, the second week in November. How we identify which topics might be more important. I mean, Jupiter, friendship, forgiveness, reconciliation, the knowledge, understanding, the spirit of the law, not the enforcement of the law, but Jupiter is like the spirit of the law. Beliefs, worldviews, all of those Jupiter archetypes are going to be loud in November because they're stationing, but then also perhaps Sagittarius and Pisces. And those house topics for you, those life topics for you might also be more apparent, more important in the first part of this month. So that's going on. They station direct in March at 15 degrees. So now Jupiter is stationing retrograde at 25 degrees of Cancer. So if you have any planets or points in Cancer, Jupiter is going to be parked right at the end of that sign, which is kind of nice. It's not a bad thing when Jupiter is just parked over something usually. And then they're going to go back to 15 degrees. So if you have any planets or points in cardinal signs, especially between 15 and 25 degrees, then you might be experiencing some of the benefits of Jupiter moving through that that 10 degree or yeah, that 10-degree window of cardinal signs. So if you have anything from 15 to 25 degrees of Aries, 15 to 25 degrees of Capricorn, Libra, or Cancer, Jupiter is going to be influencing those placements a lot more between now and March of 2026. And that could be really stabilizing, supportive, expansive. Yeah, it's I would categorize it as a favorable transit. I know it's a retrograde, but Jupiter might be moving over your things, which is not bad usually. And I guess last thing with Jupiter retrograde, when a retrograde happens, we are often rethinking, reconsidering, reorganizing topics related to that planet and the topics that that planet rules in your chart. So there could be over the 4 months between November and March, some kind of reconstruction or shifting around of things in the life topics of Pisces and Sag for you. Maybe also in the Cancer place, but yeah, if you're rethinking life topics related to the Sag and Pisces places of your chart between now and March, that would be really appropriate. I think for me, this is going to be about my business. I keep getting hints like with my 10th and my 11th and my midheaven being really activated in November that it's going to be me rethinking, replanning how I structure my business or my practice. So, there's something percolating there. Like the way that I've been doing it needs to shift, and I'm not sure how yet. So for me, I think it's going to be more like career, money stuff. For other people, it's going to be a different area of life that is being reconsidered this month. And we get Mercury starting to set in the evening sky. Now that Mercury is stationed retrograde, they're going to be moving back into the sun. So we'll see them disappearing in the evening sky after sunset as they get closer and closer. So now we're to that point where if there are words, ideas, plans that Mercury is up to, Mercury and Mars, this is going to become more under the radar, stealthy, quieter, more making moves in silence, planning things in silence, not sharing, or trying not to share for some reason. And that's after the 11th for the rest of the month. Mars is setting at about the same time. So on the 14th, Mars is going to start setting in the evening sky. They're going to be getting too close to the sun. And I mean, that's going to be the case for a while. I actually forgot to check when Mars is going to come out of the beams again, but it's not for like a couple months, a few months, several months. So Mars being under the beams, our our actions, our motivations might be a bit more hidden, a bit more, yeah, just quieter, less obvious, less apparent. And so actions, motivations, I mean, it sounds really nefarious when I say like they're hidden, but there can be all kinds of reasons why certain actions might be hidden or not. But just know that that is a thing that's going on from November 14th-ish for the rest of the month of November. We got now the planet of not only words and plans and ideas, but also the planet of action hidden, not able to be seen in the sky. So my little American brain, all the gears are turning about all the shenanigans and nefarious things that could be going on with my government during this time. But your mileage may vary if you are not in this country. Um, yeah, I don't love it. It seems it has its potentials for it to be not a problem, but it is also the recipe for a problem. So, antidote for that type of thing is honesty and being as clear as possible in November. I use the term over communicating a lot, and I don't mean that to sound like communicating unnecessarily, but over communicating as in if you're wondering if someone understands, if you're like if there's any doubt, any shadow of a doubt that someone does not know where to be or when or doesn't understand something, just assume on the side that they don't understand, and that re-explaining or reminding could be really helpful. And it's not because we don't love or trust, anyone. It's because we just know that mistakes happen and misunderstanding happens. And that's so natural and common. And especially during this type of weather in November, there's so much opportunity for misunderstanding and harmful, hurtful misunderstanding. Again, like, isn't there always that going on? I mean, yes. But again, this is like, there's more of it in November. So over communicate or be extra mindful about how, when, about what you're communicating so that people understand for max clarity. And then we get those planets setting. Then the next most interesting thing is a benefic enclosure of the moon. So that's going to be a slightly more stable time. Now, the sky as a whole is not the most stable. So I don't want people to think that this benefic enclosure is like fixing everything. It's like Saint Germain in a cocktail. It just, makes it all work. That's not the case. I still think the sky is going to be a little funky. But that being said, we do have the moon that's going to be between the rays of benefics, and that is going to help stabilize things or help make things go a little better than they might otherwise. And that is going to be from November 17th, from about 6 in the morning Central Time until the 19th at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And this nice patch of weather in Universal Time, it's on the 17th at noon. So the 17th, about 12 p.m. Universal Time, all the way to the 20th at 12:30 a.m. Universal Time. So these nicer, more stable days are effectively the 17th, 18th, 19th. Not a perfect sky, but might have a little better luck doing things, achieving things the way you want. The 17th, 18th, 19th. Couple caveats though. So within this 17th, 18th, 19th kind of umbrella, and this is why I'm like, yeah, it's nice, but it doesn't fix the whole thing. It doesn't fix the whole sky. We have the sun's engagement with Uranus beginning. So now the sun is passing through that Uranus opposition that Mercury and Mars already did. That is going to perfect on the 21st. So whereas like the lunar enclosure of the moon or the benefic enclosure of the moon helps to stabilize and support and make the life a bit more easeful, the Sun Uranus opposition is speaking to some kind of inherent tension, maybe related to someone's identity or what they want to do, like the will, like I would like with my free will to do this, and then becoming interrupted. Or it is this kind of really wanting to be yourself, wanting to be so authentic in relationship. So you and the other, and one or both people in that equation wanting to be their most authentic, radical self, which can be fine if everyone involved is a respectful, loving person. But this could also be a recipe for arguments or discord or some kind of tension with the other based on individuality, essentially. So that's not a very chill, it's not a very chill vibe, you know? So we have that benefic lunar enclosure. I think that does help stabilize things, but it is in a sky that is overall a little funky. Um, that individuality kind of, I want to be my most radical, authentic self with the other. That stuff is really intense from the 18th through the 21st. And then after the 21st, that chills out. On the 19th, again, 20th, benefic enclosure ends just in time for our next lunation, a Scorpio new moon opposite Uranus. So, before I talk about that, let me check on the chat and see how people are doing. If there's any other questions, there's about a 20-second delay. So I'm not always able to see stuff if you just typed it. All right, so we've got, yeah, on a mundane level, Uranus and Taurus. So someone is wondering, they're curious to know what Uranus has in store for its final dip in Taurus. They can't help but think of big weather, earth events, and food shortages. Yeah, certainly with like an earth sign. Well, I think I stopped sharing. With an earth sign, we're going to be dealing with matters of the earth, things we can hold and interact with physically. With Taurus, especially, the exaltation of the moon. This is a sign that has to do with food, with material abundance that we grow to support and provide for ourselves. And it's so much about stability in the material plane. And Uranus disrupts that. So, disrupting anything of the physical world around us, pretty much, which doesn't narrow it down at all. But that's very different. I mean, it does narrow it down a little bit because it's not Uranus in an air sign. That would feel more like interruptions to communications infrastructure, invisible infrastructure. Yeah, anything with communications or travel, the economy, uh, that is also of the material world, but more in the technology, communication, intellectual sphere, interruptions in that way. Uh, so I could go kind of go on and on and on forever. That would be a fun exercise to do, to think about all the different types of interruptions that Uranus might do in, say, Aries versus Pisces versus Taurus. But I agree. That was a great comment. Um, just kind of thinking about it in people's birth charts that I know. I'm going to pick on my family because I know none of them listen to this. And that's what you get if you're my family members. I'm going to use you for a guinea pig, probably. Um, both of my brothers have their midheaven at the end of Taurus, and both of their professions are changing. One of them works for the government, and so we know what's happening with the government. So he's not getting a paycheck, and I assume his job will continue to change over the next couple years. But yeah, we'll see what happens between now and March. Not that I'm trying to time their demise or anything. I love them dearly, but there's a big change happening on their midheaven of career. My other brother, similarly about to do a career change. So yeah, it's like whatever, mundanely, world-wise, we can think of that. But if you have your rising sign, it's such a gift. If you know your birth time, if you know your rising sign, it's such a huge gift. And then you can specifically see what is Uranus going to be bothering? And then look at your chart and kind of trying to teach you how to fish if Uranus is having any strong connections with anything else in your chart, and that's how you can try to pinpoint. And this is another reason if this is too much to get a professional astrologer, because then we can try to pinpoint where is the interruption going to end up. We might not know exactly what it will be, but we can try to get a fuzzy outline of like where in your life, though. Is it in your bank account or is it in your health department? Because those are different places usually. Um, okay, I digress, but it was a good one. Someone says it sounds like November 6th is a void. Yeah, I would avoid. Yeah, the first week of November, I'm a little skeptical, but yeah, especially like the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, because we've got Mars and Uranus opposed. We've got that full moon in Taurus that looks kind of interesting and just very active and busy because the moon is very bright. And then we've got the moon triggering into that Mars Uranus opposition again on the 6th. So yeah, it's a take care of yourself extra day. Do whatever you want, but just take care of yourself extra. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your comments and contributions. I think that's all the questions. Oh, there's another one here. Yeah, let's talk about the water trine. I'm not so sure. Tapestry of Intrigue brings up a really good question here. They say this may be slightly off topic. It's not, it is on topic. But what do you think about the Grand Water Trine occurring currently and recurring in late November? Yup, because Venus is going to get up there. And they're saying lots of content out there is calling it fortunate and wonderful. But this is a lot of water and Saturn is involved. Yeah, I'm skeptical. I got two minds about everything. Of course I do. I'm a Pisces moon. But yeah, I wanted to have so much hope. Like, just to be real, I started out being very constructive about this myself. I was like, well, we've got Mars and Saturn in a trine. And when we get Mars and Saturn in a trine, often it's putting together that motivation and energy with discipline and structure real nice. And we can channel our actions and that can be really great. I've been noticing it in water. It's not as motivating. It's not as like constructive as I thought it would be. I feel like when we had, what was it? For a while, we had Saturn in Aquarius and Mars in Gemini. This was in 2024, 2023, 2024. Um, that air trine, that felt really constructive. Saturn was on top, channeling Mars. And now the difference here is Mars is on top. So I feel like this is much more like Mars is trying to like brute force push through some challenge. Like, because that's the energy of that overcoming square. Mars has the upper hand. Mars is really leading the interaction. And so what does Mars do? Mars finds what they're passionate about in Scorpio. They don't get passionate about just anything, but when they do find something, they really go for it. Get out of their way. But the thing is that there is something in their way, and it's Saturn, and it's a trine. So maybe it's like a soft obstacle or a medium-sized obstacle. Maybe it's not the biggest obstacle, and there's so much power here to get through it. But it is still like that energy of Mars wanting to do and act and decide that is really running into and starting to be faced and have this conversation with a planet of doubt and skepticism. And hey, are you sure about that? Or here's some delay or challenge you didn't foresee. Neptune doesn't make things any clearer. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't been experiencing this as constructive and kind of motivating as I had hoped. And I also was very hopeful that Jupiter would somehow like hold it all together and like sprinkle their fancy magical dust over this whole thing. I don't know. And I heard Austin Coppock say in the astrology podcast uh, forecast for October, it was last month's. or maybe it was the month before. It must have been last month. I specifically remember hearing Austin Coppock give a little bit of skepticism that this Mars Saturn thing, that's a lot of weight and kind of whatever words he used to describe that difficulty. That's a lot for Jupiter to have to wrangle. Even though Jupiter's so powerful right now, and even though this is a trine, and I know trines are supposed to be this energy of Jupiter, growth, expansion, opportunity. But Jupiter is also, it can just be stabilizing. So I wonder if is Jupiter just trying to stabilize in some of our cases? This won't be all of our cases, but is Jupiter just trying to stabilize what Mars and Saturn are kind of struggling with up here or reflecting struggle? Jupiter's just trying to manage that. And that feels more like what it is. Like that's what I've been feeling into with it. Um, Jupiter is, of course, instilling a lot of hope, a lot of solutions, faith, optimism that, hey, Mars, yeah, let's go do it. Mars is like, okay, here's some serious things we have to consider. Or Saturn says that to Mars. And then Saturn is really putting those limitations, all those limitations of Saturn are being leaked onto Jupiter. And Jupiter's like, okay, well, I'm really hopeful about this, but yeah, Saturn is telling me that there's some challenges or delays or obstacles or some difficulty that we have to deal with, but we sure can. So let's do it. And then it just kind of keeps going around and around. But this has not been feeling like, I don't know, light and easy breezy. And then to your point, at the end of the month in November, Mars and Mercury skedaddle along, but then we've got Venus coming more into the picture, and Venus meets Mercury, and then they lock into this whole thing. And now here we've got two benefics instead of two malefics. We've still got we've still got Saturn and Neptune involved. Venus is they're not doing well at all. So as much as there are two benefics here, one of them is really compromised. So I don't know if this is necessarily going to feel any better. I think it's just going to feel different. It's going to be some similar themes, of course, because it's going to be the same areas of life. This is my vocational triangle. So this is all with my like career and providing for myself and all that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced it's going to be like better at the end of the month because it's a retrograde Venus under the beams in Scorpio. All of that in English just means Venus is not doing well. And so when Venus isn't doing well, I don't know how much help she's going to be in kind of lifting up this whole thing. But I think that it can be, if these are more internalizing inward signs, water signs are reflective, contemplative, they look inward. What I wonder is like, it's not all about what's happening on the outside. It's not about progress in the material plane all the time. Sometimes maybe what is going on with this trine is some internal work, some internal shifting, some more quiet internal contemplation. And because there's so many retrogrades involved, I mean, like we got retrograde Jupiter, retrograde Saturn, retrograde Venus, or sorry, retrograde Mercury, not Venus. Is a lot of reconsidering, rethinking, re-understanding, and maybe in a quieter, more subtle way. So I'm not sure how much of this is going to be apparent externally. I know last month I mentioned a water trine that I was skeptical of, and I had totally forgotten about what it was, but it was late 2024, and it was like Saturn, Mercury, and something else. And it wasn't fun, even though it was like a grand trine in water and the ingredients looked like it should have been fine. It was tough. So for me personally, again, N of one, your mileage may vary, but yeah, I'm not gonna just like stamp it's gonna be cool because it's a grand trine. Because sometimes what is free flowing is bullshit. It depends on the ingredients. Nikki Nice says water is strong when it feels like it. Yeah. Yep. And I didn't read your second comment, but I just did. And it's exactly what my brain thought. A determined trickle can cut a canyon if given time. Yes, that's so beautiful. And especially Scorpio. That's like what I think about with Scorpio is that long, consistent pressure of water over time that can carve out anything, get out of its way, but it's not fast. That feels very Scorpio water, is the carving of the canyon. Thank you for that, Nikki. Nice. That was very nice. All right. So we talked about Uranus. Did I miss anything there? Now it's time to talked about the Mercury retrograde, talked about that. Uh, Scorpio New Moon. So let's talk about this Scorpio New Moon on the 20th of November at 28 degrees of Scorpio, right there with Mercury retrograde, right across the way from Uranus. So this is a lot of change. It looks very, sorry to say it, very transformative. You can cross it off on the bingo board. I said transformative for Scorpio, but it is. And it's the last decan of Scorpio, which is like the most transformy, I feel like, of all of, well, if I could, it's also transformative in all of its different parts. But that last 10 degrees of Scorpio, that's where you have to you do your final letting go. You have to finally let go and release whatever you're clinging to so that it can spring into the next thing. And we had a retrograde Mercury, so that reconsidering, replanning, rethinking, redoing, all of that comes into play. The rule of re's itself, a rather transformative process that we get a lot with Mercury. And then Uranus, changing things, doing things differently, breakthroughs, sudden insights, interruptions, disruptions. It does not look like a very restful, peaceful, enjoyable new moon, but it is a new chapter opening up. Beginnings, endings, new chapters opening up, very transformative with the Scorpio parts of your chart. So for this theoretical Virgo rising, this might be around their short distance travel or their short distance commute. This could be about in-laws, siblings, cousins, uncles, aunts, anything like that. For me, Scorpio is my 10th house. So this is probably going to be about my career or my public presence. So some change there. It is pretty plugged in to the outer planets, all of them. So, well, I'm focusing on that Uranus opposition. There's also some soft aspects, a trine with Neptune, a sextile with Pluto, that again are just adding the impact factor of this new moon. So, new chapters opening up, a lot of changing, shifting energy at this time. So, it might be a minute until we really see what comes out of this new chapter. I'm kind of wondering if we don't need to wait. I mean, over the next few months, Mars itself is going to go through a Cazimi over the solstice season, essentially. We're going to have a rebirth of Mars. So this kind of feels like the first maybe push in a rebirth of our Scorpio area of our life that is going to continue as we wrap up 2025 and start 2026. Now, the last decan, this is a Venus ruled decan, and I grabbed Austin Kopic's words on this place that I heard him say at a workshop about the 36 decans. This is his NORWAC workshop. It's on the NORWAC website if you're interested. And he talks about extremely alchemical decan, ghosts of desires past, desires, hungers of the soul. So, desires of the past, things that you used to love, or things that you used to be so devoted to that maybe you're not anymore. Maybe you're letting that go, or maybe it's coming into its next iteration. It is transformation of decomposition, the perfect soil for next season's flowers, that which breaks down and transforms, takes the underworld desires that need to be enacted or left behind. It can provide natives with this decan, can provide natives with tremendous insight into humans and what motivates them and drives them. He mentions you can become lost in the third decan of Scorpio. It's the Seven of Cups. So if anyone's familiar with the Seven of Cups, we've got illusion, delusion, all of these different things that could be or couldn't be. And so there could be that kind of getting lost, it sounds like, in the different possibilities here. And then he mentions delayed gratification leading to wisdom. So if we want to know, why is it transformative? I like to think of before we had square, or before we had Uranus being what is transformative, or Pluto, any of the outers. I feel like all of them are agents of transformation. But before we had them, I think a lot of times Mars, Scorpio, squares, they were like such a transformative energy. So the energy of Mars, Aries, Scorpio, Mars, and the square itself, agents of transformation. So any decan of Scorpio for me is going to be have that kind of alchemical quality. But I think we're reaching the last stop, we're reaching the end of the sign. It is that last moment of letting go, that last moment of release after doing that whole journey of emotional dissatisfaction to emotional satisfaction to now what? So, new chapters opening up. New moon, new chapters. And I'm on a light, so I'm gonna turn on my light. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I have to put mute on so you couldn't hear every bone in my body crack as I got up. I'm feeling old. Saturn is over my moon, and I can tell. Okay, so one last thing here about this Scorpio moon, several last things. Mars can't see it. So, the ruler, like this is too where I think maybe what the new chapters are, it's going to take some time to sort that out. We do have a lot of help here, though. We've got both benefics who can support whatever is trying to open up or unfurl, or if we're trying to close something off, let go of something. We've got some supportive energy here to do that. Mercury retrograde is so good at letting things go and, kind of reorganizing, renegotiating things. So I do think as much as it doesn't look like comfortable new moon, could be something constructive in these new chapters. But the ruler after this, or sorry, not the ruler, the aspect that the moon is going to make after this is a square with Saturn. So Saturn is those limitations, delays, obstructions, challenges, and that'll be one of the first things that the moon really experiences once it gets out of those beams is going to be Saturn. So in the thing that is opening up or closing down, whatever new chapter is here, is there loss? Is there grief that needs to happen? Is there that realistic view of things that needs to come in with Saturn? Or is it in that new beginning, new chapter, we're getting a clear view of what the challenges are, and it's a square, so we really do have to make a change, do something differently. We can't just keep pushing and expect it to work. There needs to be some kind of adjustment with a square. So some adjustment needed to tackle whatever is in the way of these new beginnings coming up. Yeah, so what limitations and challenges are we trying to work with or around? What hope or solutions are also there because Jupiter can see this new moon. So Jupiter is there saying, hey, what about this? What about that? If we're being asked to commit or devote ourselves to something, we got to read the fine print. So if anything is trying to open up new at this time, read the fine print on it because of Neptune. Ask about what the drawbacks might be. So with the moon running into Saturn square after it gets 15 degrees away from the sun, then that begs the question of, if there's any kind of commitment, responsibility coming in, any kind of structure coming in, or like, hey, you got to do it this way or that. Neptune is here. So just make sure you're asking questions, double checking, reading the fine print. And it also might really speak to the fact that maybe the challenges or difficulties are a bit nebulous. Maybe they're not easily dealt with. It's not like you can just call the plumber and fix it. Maybe it's going to take 6 months with a therapist. Neptune brings in this lack of straight line. It's not linear. It's a very winding path with Neptune. So, again, whatever's beginning, opening up here at the end of November, it might take some time. So yeah, I think those are my notes. So not a lot of the direct support that I want from Mars in this lunation, but there is still some support from other planets. And while the lunation itself is in a trine with Saturn, speaking to, at least during the new moon, the challenges are going to come in as surmountable. Yes, there they are. Maybe we can approach them softly. A day later, moon is going to get past Mars there. Yeah, the 21st, 22nd look just okay. But the moon's next aspect is going to be a square with Saturn. So then those challenges get more real. They get more abrasive and harsh on the 22nd, 21st, 22nd. So those don't look like the most fun days of the month. Yeah, take care of yourself extra on the 21st and 22nd. There is a malefic enclosure of the moon on the 21st. This begins at 5:12 a.m. Central Time and stretches for a day until 7:13 a.m. Central Time on the 22nd. The moon is going to be in between these rays of Saturn and Mars. So this is a time on the 21st into the 22nd when you're either going to be probably doing something difficult, doing a chore, doing something that's not super comfortable or fun, or you can, in terms of planning, strategizing, know that the 21st, if you want something to turn out really well with ease, to feel good and comfortable, don't do it on the 21st. If you wanted to have a tea party that's like nice, don't do it on the 21st. It's not very fitting for that. On universal time, the difficult window where we might be doing hard things or experiencing difficult things, that's going to be universal time from 11:12 a.m. on the 21st until 1:13 p.m. on the 22nd. So your morning is okay, but then it gets a little bit more intense as the day goes on if you're in the rest of the world. So that's the 21st, 22nd. I'm going to skip a bunch of days unless anyone has anything else that week that they want me to look at. I'm going to skip to the 27th of November when Saturn stations direct. Now they're at 25 degrees of Pisces. So any points or planets that you might have 25 to 30, sorry, 25 through 29 degrees, 59 arc minutes of Pisces, or Gemini, or the end of Sagittarius, or the end of Virgo. All of those places have been getting touched by Saturn again for a last time since September 1st. So September 1st to now, and until next February, we're going to have Saturn with these mutable signs, Pisces, especially squaring planets, opposing planets in other mutable signs. So there is that difficulty, that challenge, delay, slowness, loss, grief that Saturn can bring in to those mutable signs. Now, this is not quite the end of the story, but we're getting there. Saturn's going to station direct on November 27th. They're going to start moving forward and eventually get out of Pisces And then on February 13th of 2026, that's when Saturn gets out of Pisces for good. And then you can say, you know, for the most part, if you've got Saturn in Pisces, your Saturn return will be over on February 13th for good until next time. So just want to let everyone know, late mutable signs, Saturn is going to be touching those areas of life. So if you're feeling extra challenged or slow, or even just being really hard on yourself, if you're being extra critical about Pisces topics, that could be Saturn. So just know it won't be like that forever. Criticism can be absolutely necessary, but everything has a not enough, a good amount, and a too much amount. And when Saturn becomes too much, it is unnecessary hypercriticism. So be extra kind to yourself if you got Pisces, late Gemini, late Virgo, late Sag. And similar to what I was talking to earlier, this forecast, when Jupiter stationed and got louder the first couple weeks of November, really activating Jupiter ruled places in our charts. Saturn, similarly, at the end of November, is going to be really activating the Capricorn and Aquarius parts of our charts, making those topics even louder than they might be usually. So if you know your rising sign, then you can maybe pinpoint if things are going extra slow, if things are going extra difficultly, that could be a sign that Saturn is stationing, and know that it won't be like this forever. And then Mercury is gonna do their phasis and station. So Mercury is gonna start popping up in the morning sky. I'll show you what that looks like. What? Mercury is gonna start showing themselves right before sunrise. We'll be able to see Mercury in the morning sky, and then the sun will rise and we won't be able to see them anymore because it will be light out. But at night, they are now going to be visible from about November 19th onward. So now for the month of November, plans, ideas, words, conversations that might have been not had, quiet, not apparent, now more into December, the words will be heard, the plans will be known or shared or more apparent. Anything with buying, selling, communicating is going to be more obvious and apparent in December. Mercury's visible. If anyone has been waiting for news, information that you haven't been able to get, it's usually after Mercury becomes visible that information starts to come in. So I don't think that we'll be getting all of our missing information on November 29th exactly, but our chances of if you're still waiting to hear about something, hear about a job, any kind of news you're waiting for, the probability is going to increase more and more and more into December because we're going to have Mercury visible. And again, that post-retrograde is done by December 16th for Mercury. So at this point, I really expect, any Mercury retrograde stories to be wrapping up, reaching their natural conclusion. I am realizing also I totally forgot the Mercury Cazimi. So let's just scoot back to that real quick because that's a day of clarity usually. That's going to be on, oh God, it's that new moon. That's funny. I didn't even notice that. So what does that mean lately? It's the new moon. It's the Mercury Cazimi. It's the combination new moon Mercury Cazimi. That is exactly what we have going on. So all of that Scorpio new moon discussion I had about chapters opening up, things closing down, things starting up, chapters opening, probably with a lot of change and transformation involved and reconsidering of things. And this Mercury Cazimi adds a bit of clarity, which is nice because Neptune isn't. So if you have any clarity, especially on the 20th of November, around that new moon, yeah, write it down. Write in your journal about it. Talk to yourself about it so you don't forget. Um, Sometimes we can work things out during those Cazimis. And I don't want to, I think in the past, I'm realizing I need to be less biased. I'm still just in the forever lifelong process of rooting out all my biases. But in the past, I've always thought about Mercury Cazimis as this day of clarity, this day of yeah, like I'm understanding things more than I used to for some reason, little insights and breakthroughs intellectually speaking. But in the past, I've used the phrase having good ideas. And even like in moments where we feel really clear, those aren't always good ideas. Sometimes we can feel really clear and like, oh yeah, resolute. I'm doing that, obviously, and it's a horrible idea. So I need to just, know like clarity around something for better or for worse, whatever it is. And I am just not going to say anything else other than that. And hopefully it's not a bad idea that you're feeling very clear about, but it's worth paying attention to. And last thing about the whole month, we have Venus entering Sag. So after Venus's traversing through Scorpio, they're going to finally reach Sagittarius on November 30th into December 1st. And that's going to help, at least in one way, insofar as Venus will have more dignity. They don't love being in a fire sign. That's a bit spicy for them. They did like being in a water sign, but I think they would rather be in Sagittarius uh, than Scorpio. So in that way, they might do a little better. And so relating, having fun, joy, pleasure, good times might improve after November 30th. But they are still under the beams of the sun. So they're still a bit hidden. And so relations, gift giving, those fun Venus things, having yummies, all of that. That's still, it's not like the strongest. It's better than it was earlier in the month or for the month of November. It's better in December, but I think it's going to take a little while here for Venus to get in really good shape again. Um, let's just say, I mean, yeah, geez. They've got one thing or another going on for the better part of the next few months. So I hope everyone enjoyed Venus in Libra because that's the nicest it's going to be for Venus for several months. Okay. Even I like them in, again, I like them in Sagittarius. It's fun. It's very fun. But there is something, whoops, there's something a bit subdued about Venus under the beams. So any planet under the beams, it's not like oh, why do I keep going to Capricorn? Sorry. Um, that's the ingress I wanted. So Venus and Sagittarius, yes, they're fun. They're fun at parties. They're so great at giving gifts and being charming. However, uh, under the beams, it's like it's a quiet party. It's not an obvious party, or the party was canceled, but it's not because we don't love you. It's because something else happened. So there can be fun here and enjoyment, but I'm not going to give everyone like, oh yeah, it's going to be super easy and surely nothing will be sold out and you'll definitely not run into any problems on your way to joy or pleasure. It's like, no, we're going to run into some problems on the way to joy and pleasure in November and December. But if we know that ahead of time, we can not have crazy high expectations and make ourselves sad later. We can be flexible and adaptable and changeable in the face of interruption or disruption. We cannot be hard on ourselves if, well, Venus is under the beams and we're not feeling like being the hostess with the mostess. Like, don't be hard on yourself. Um, but very good at covert gift giving, very good at sneaky, nice things somehow. Okay, I think I'm out of useful things to say. Let me see if there's any final questions. Uh, oh, and I missed, nope, I am going to go back and say one thing. I missed the fact that Venus is going to be moving through this opposition with Uranus. So at the end of November, relationally, trying different things, hanging out with different people, being with new people that you're not usually hanging out with. Uh, Anything relationally that you're doing differently, great. But relationally, if there are interruptions at the end of November, disruptions, this is where, again, I wouldn't try to dig my heels in as much as it might be better to go with the flow. Not every time, but I know the tendency of fixed planets is to not want to go with the flow and to hold their ground. But when Uranus is here, I'm a little skeptical of our ability to thwart that. So sometimes going with the flow is better. Um, yeah, Venus is having to go through that at the end of the month. And it also speaks to, especially in one-on-one relationships, that Venus, especially in Scorpio, if you're doing anything counterculture, subculture, a little bit different than the expected based on whatever your regular culture is that you're in, whatever is counterculture to that, that's what Venus might be up to at this time. They might just be enjoying their pickled herring, and other people don't get why you like that, but maybe you just like that. Or you're listening to your death metal math rock and other people don't get it, but you're like, wow, I've listened to this song 800 times and I'm still obsessed with it. So, it could be that just very individualistic. I love this thing and I love what I love. And it's not what other people understand because it's Venus and Scorpio, but we're doing it. And I don't care if that makes me different and weird or whatever. So that could be what this is. Trying new things in relationship. So that can all be very constructive and fun. Be flexible. I think yeah, okay. Now I didn't forget anything. I would have been really sad if I forgot to talk about that. Let's see if there's any final questions. Last call for questions. And just reading the comments here. Yeah, there are some, at least in my country, there's so many family gatherings around November, December for various religions. There's all kinds of festivities, and it is a very social couple months in my neck of the woods. And yeah, the one solace I do have is that the last several years, we have not had great astrology. We have not had like stable, chill astrology for holiday season for like years now. So this is not our first rodeo, but this one doesn't look any easier than the last ones that we've had. Let me actually just look. Like what were we dealing with last year at this time? Yeah, there was a Mercury retrograde last year. The year before, there was that Mercury Mars thing. I got myself into trouble on that one. I'll never forget that. Yeah, so the last two have at least have been not my favorite kind of astrology to have when I need to drive 6 hours somewhere. But yeah, we'll get through it. We have before. Tapestry of Intrigue is mentioning that the amount of aspects to and from the last 10 degrees of Scorpio this month is really something. Definitely not pumped for Venus and Scorpio. Yeah, there is so much going on in terms of what they're saying is this last 10-degree area of Scorpio. I mean, there's so much that happens there. Let's just watch, all of the planets. First, it's Mercury and Mars that move through this last 10 degrees of Scorpio. Then it's the Sun. Then it's Venus and Mercury again. Then it's Mercury. So it's just a very busy, active area. So that means that, yeah, anything that you have in your birth chart, this last chunk of Scorpio, or if you have a lot going on at the end of Leo, a lot of stuff for points at the end of Aquarius or Taurus, yeah, you're going to have a very busy, interesting couple months ahead, but especially November, very interesting. So best of luck. I think that's all I have. Thank you so much, everyone, for all your questions and for reminding me about that water trine. Yeah. So interesting. Just because it's trines doesn't mean it's fun. Um, it can be really constructive. It depends on the ingredients. Water is always a little tricky because I think it can be so subtle. It can be internal stuff that's happening inside of us that's really impactful, even though there's not a lot to show for it, like externally. So, the realm of feelings and vision and imagination is water. The realm of connection is water. So when it comes to our imaginal world this month, depending on who you are, the feeling and emotional world and the imaginal world, we might have to be careful. There's a lot of water activity. We could be thinking and imagining too many things that aren't, real or that haven't happened yet. So remember Earth. Don't forget about Earth. Um, do we even have any Earth? Where is the Earth this month? Do we have any? My God, we have none. Just besides the moon moving through Earth signs and besides Uranus, who is unstable, being in what is the stable Earth signs, we don't have Earth in November. It's like water, air, fire town. So yeah, don't forget Earth this month. Just our practical, regular, degular, boring life stuff, taking care of our physical world. What are we, how are we sleeping? What are we eating? Are we okay? Are we eating at all? That kind of stuff. Don't forget about that. Yeah, good points, everybody. Okay, any questions? You can always email me. My email is aligninglight@gmail.com. Hello, Ezzy. Welcome. Um, you can always also comment below. I've been so struggling to see YouTube comments in a timely manner, but I think I've got it figured out. I just need to change my routine with it because the technology changed. So also comment below. If you're listening to this later and you have questions, please comment below. I can try to answer them. Again, you can email me. And then, of course, if you have other astrology questions, concerns, if you have any conceptual, philosophical questions about astrology, especially Hellenistic astrology, my next Q&A is going to be uh, that is gonna be November 13th at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So you can come there live with your questions, or you can comment, email, send me questions. Otherwise, I usually do a call for them a few days before on Instagram. And you can find me on Instagram, Threads. I am also on Blue Sky as Claire Moon or Aligning Light Astrology, one of those. I'm not on Instagram that much, but very rarely. But I have DMs there. I respond to those the most slowly. So if you respond to me on Instagram, it's going to be probably a month. Don't take it personally. I just forget about it entirely. I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great November. Just take extra care of yourself. It's a little too interesting of a month, if you know what I mean, astrologically. And oh, don't forget about the discount code that I mentioned earlier, Libra, LIBRA. You can use that for 25% off any of my services. And yeah, have a great month ahead. Best of luck. I love you all very much. Till next time.